So today we're in New Lenox, Illinois. We just drove up from Champaign, Illinois, had a great time down there, went to a very cool roastery that I'm going to take you through, and I think it's going to be a really great learning experience for all of us.
Hi, I'm Mark Harriet. This is a family business. We bring in coffee from about 16 different countries. Probably the part that I'm most passionate about is the fact that 90% of our coffee is traceable. We actually know and work with the growers or the growers' co-ops. And so we work with our brokers, we take trips to the source to meet and work with the people, and we're involved in a few projects at source. And I think I take most pride in that, and the fact that it's a matter of giving back. It's just not a one-way street. The higher, every 100 meters you go up the mountain, you decrease the temperature by 0.77 degrees Celsius, which is I think around 1.04 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, what does that have to do with it? It gets cooler. So if it's cooler, it has less things to defend itself against. So the plant can spend its energy building the density of the bean. The density allows us to do a lot of different things with it. We can roast it dark, we can do different things. But a low-grown coffee, like in Brazil, doesn't have the density because the plant has a lot of other things to contend with, if you will. And so the density of that coffee is not as much, and so you can't do as much with that. So to me, there's some correlations between some of those things. So every 300 meters you go up, you increase the sucrose in the coffee, in the seed by 10%. So there are two ways coffee's processed. Okay, there's a wet process and a dry process, and we refer to that as the natural and the wet process. What are the similarities you see? Both are green coffee beans. Mm-hmm. This is Costa Rica. This happens to be from Sumatra.
Well, these. It's almost like I don't know if it's more chaff or what's on the bean itself, but
look at the parchment.
Yeah, a bit darker.
Darker in color than this, right?
Yep.
Not as uniform in color as this. I call this more residue or collateral on it, and that's because it's the dry process. The wet process, the cherries are brought in. Usually it happens in places where there's a lot of water, Central America.
Yep.
Go into a vat of water, probably 15 by 15 by 15. Okay. Goes in, it's the first part of quality control because the ripe cherries will sink and the unripe cherries will float, along with the twigs and the leaves and anything else that's there. And that's skimmed off, and that really becomes, that coffee is also processed. But it becomes what I refer to as consumption coffee that's sold locally. Anyway, so it goes down, and the coffee will sit in there for, I don't know, 24 hours, 20 to 24 hours. And basically the cherry will take on water. So it goes through some kind of a separator. Sometimes it's a machine that has two cylinders, and the coffee and cherries go in between the two. Okay. Separates the seed from the cherry. It goes into a fermentation tank. All right, and the fermentation tank, they'll sit there, again, in that 20 to 24 hour range. I mean, these people have very sophisticated equipment, but yet they'll take a stick with a can on it and smell it, and they know exactly, when it. And you don't want it to sit there too long because it'll become over fermented, and then that will show up in the cup. And then it goes out and it's dried either in a mechanical dryer or out on the patio, as you can see up in the pictures up there. Yep. Okay. Now that coffee, a wet process coffee, is you will feel that coffee when you taste it right on the front part of your palate. If my hand is your palate or your tongue, you're going to feel a bite around there. It's going to be a rat-a-tat-tat. It's going to be a snare drum. So you're going to feel it around there. Okay. Okay. For me, I like blends. Alex likes single origin. Okay. Because not all wet processed coffees for me finish all the way across my palate. To me, they're like the pace-setter horse at the Kentucky Derby. Their job is to get out and run, get around that first turn, be number one or number two.
You like it from front to back that's why you like mixing, or?
Yeah, that's what I like mixing for it. Each of us have, you have certain positives and negatives, you have certain positive and negatives. Everybody brings something to the table. You're trying to balance those things out, and so when you're putting together a blend, why would you put together 3 pace-setter horses? Because they're all going to vie for your attention up front on your palate, and they may not finish. Okay. The Sumatran here was a dry process. Okay, conceptually the seed, the cherries allow to dry on the seed. A dry process, you probably won't feel, it won't have the acidity Not this acidity, but the sharpness, the rat-a-tat-tat. You won't feel it up in the front part of your palate. You'll feel it back in here, and then it gets back and gets wide. You kind of marry the two. You know, Mocha Java is a blend.
Okay.
And generally, that is a blend of Yemen or Ethiopian coffee and a wet process with an Indonesian coffee that's either a semi or a dry process. Okay, so now you're getting the flavor and notes up here, and then you're getting the body in the back.
So we've gotten a lot of comments from people who say, you know, the acid in coffee really bothers them. And are there any options around that, and how do you minimize the acids?
The acids in the coffee are natural, and that's what brings the taste to it. Okay, what they're really talking about is it's the chemical reaction between heating the coffee when you're brewing it and the acids that are in the coffee that create for some people this acidity that gives them an upset stomach. So the way to get around that is that for most people, some can never have anything, but for most people who have this problem, they can do cold brew.
Okay.
And cold brew is basically using the toddy system. You're going to reduce the acids by somewhere between two-thirds to 75%.
Okay.
I guess you reduce it enough for an individual that this really doesn't bother them. We have a number of customers and do cold brew at home. So they have it in the ice box because you can keep it to 2 weeks. I think, you know, I've done some testing here from a taste standpoint. We've done a little bit longer than that, but they say 2 weeks. So they'll add 1 or 2 ounces and they'll add hot water. That's their cup of coffee. And for them physically, it doesn't bother them. Colombian coffee, this is base coffee. Okay. This is what coffee should smell like. Go ahead. Yep. That's what coffee should smell like. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so 14 grams. What we're going to do, we want to watch our,
what I want you to do here is when we do this, I want you to smell it when you put the hot water on. Okay. You'll get some things out of that. Go ahead. This is the dry. Same bean, processed differently. Take a whiff.
oh yeah, total difference. So we're cupping right now, we're pouring the water into each cup, and you can smell a distinct difference between every bean. And it's pretty phenomenal when you put them back to back like that.
You're going to get your nose down there, you're trying to push it away, break it. Okay? What we do is you take the beans and you put them in kegs. The kegs are dry, obviously. They're freshly dry. So we let them sit there for 3 months. We'll roll them, turn them over, and etc. In that keg over there, we've got about 80 pounds, 100 pounds or more of the dry processed Colombian in a Chardonnay barrel. That should be very good. And you're going to. Okay. A trick is if you take your front teeth and put them just a little bit in front of your bottom teeth, you just suck it right up. All right, let's go. All right.
swish it around your mouth?
Yeah, I'll chew it like I do wine. Now, my habit is I'll do 2 or 3 of the same one. The first flavor I may have a little bit of residue from the previous one. Go on to the next one. The next one is the Costa Rica, and see if you get the bite up here. Okay. See if that's where you feel the coffee in your mouth.
It's taking so much for me not to swallow.
This should be in here and back and a little bit wider. So let's see if we get that. How's that for you?
Oh yeah, whole center part of my tongue.
Yeah. When you're putting together blends, let's talk about this from a strategic standpoint. When you're putting together blends, why are you going to put 3 pace setter horses together? Because they're going to vie for all your attention where? Right on the edge. Right on the edge. So I'm going to take that, and maybe with this over here, so now I've got a coffee that's going to go all the way through my mouth. A little spice, a little chocolate.
Yep. And there's more citrus in this over the Costa Rican.
Correct.
Yep.
This coffee is bourbon barrel aged. Out of all the ones we've done, this is my favorite in terms of smell.
Hey Natman, we finally found our bourbon coffee. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I learned a lot there. I had never cupped before, and I started to really understand the difference between drier natural processing of the coffee bean and wet processing of coffee. Totally different. It really highlighted how different coffee can be when you process it in 2 different ways. So, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next week. Bye guys.